Bienvenidos a nuestro nuevo vídeo del canal de IEI High School. Os invito a que visitéis nuestro canal, donde encontraréis vídeos de explicaciones y prácticas sobre el emprendimiento y el liderazgo, el razonamiento verbal, ciencias naturales con énfasis en el calentamiento global e incluso finanzas corporativas o físicas. En el vídeo de hoy abordamos el tema de los polos y qué está sucediendo aquí como consecuencia del calentamiento global. Welcome to our new video. We continue talking about climate change. This time, we will focus on what has been happening in the poles due to global warming and what consequences we and other living species are facing if we do not act quickly. We will cover 3 topics, including some facts about the North and South poles, as well as the poles' role in regulating the Earth's climate. Finally, we will also cover the consequences derived from what is happening in the poles. So let's begin our presentation by talking a little bit about the poles. When we talk about the poles, we're talking about the Arctic and the Antarctic. On the one hand, the Arctic is the northernmost region of the Earth. Opposite to Antarctica, as we will see in a minute, the Arctic region is comprised by several countries, such as Canada, Finland, Iceland, Sweden, Norway, Russia, and the territories of Alaska in the US, and Greenland in Denmark, and the Arctic Ocean. Antarctica, on the other hand, is a continent itself, and actually the world's southernmost continent, located almost entirely south of the Antarctic Circle. It is surrounded by the Southern Ocean, known as the Océano Antártico in Spanish. The continent has an extension of around 5.5 million square miles or 14.2 million square kilometers, and 98% of the region is covered by ice. It is the continent with the windiest, driest, and coldest weather, where the lowest temperature on Earth was ever registered, minus 89.2 Celsius degrees, in 1983. Because of the extreme weather conditions, it is the least inhabited continent with around 5,000 people in the summer and 1,000 during the winter. As we can imagine, because of the extreme weather conditions, both the Arctic and Antarctica offer a harsh environment to thrive in. Opposite to Antarctica, the Arctic region is home to indigenous people, as well as other groups that inhabit this land. However, when it comes to animals, both the North and South poles are home to species that are native to these environments and that cannot be found anywhere else, such as penguins, polar bears, seals, and certain types of algae and bacteria. So what is the poles' role in regulating the Earth's climate, and how is global warming affecting the poles? When it comes to regulating the Earth's climate, both poles play a major role. So what is this role? They act like coolers. Warm air generated in the tropics, as well as ocean currents, are attracted towards and by the poles. Later, the poles cool this warm air and ocean currents down by building ice that is sent back to the equator. And the poles create a cycle that is vital for regulating the distribution of heat on the planet, hence regulating the Earth's climate. As we saw in one of our earliest videos, we studied how oceans can be considered carbon sinks. The ice sheet, in addition, makes Antarctica a heat sink, and this ice also regulates the vital exchange of gases between the atmosphere and the ocean. However, this weather cycle that regulates our climate can only work if the interactions between the oceans, the atmosphere, and glaciers are not altered. Unfortunately, as we have been studying in our previous videos, we know that global warming and climate change are changing the interactions between oceans and atmosphere due to the increased emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, changing the water currents and increasing the temperature between land and atmosphere. Scientists have estimated that the Arctic is warming 3 times faster than the global average. This increase in temperature seems to be even higher in Antarctica, since it is estimated that the region has increased its temperature by almost 3 degrees in the last 50 years.
making it 10 times faster than the rest of the planet. So what happens if more warmer air reaches the poles? It sounds logical to say that warmer air in the poles will result in melting ice. However, this is actually more dangerous than what it sounds like. Let's remember that in order for the climate to be regulated and stable, we need the poles to stay how they've usually been, mostly covered by thick sheets of ice. Glaciers are a vital part in regulating the cycle between all factors for our climate. So with melting glaciers, our climate will change. Not only that, but although melting ice comes as a consequence from global warming, this melting ice contributes at the same time to more global warming. When ice melts, it releases masses of carbon that had been stored in the ice for millions of years in the form of carbon dioxide or methane into the atmosphere, contributing hence to more emissions of greenhouse gases and more global warming. The Arctic soil, for example, has been estimated to account for half of the Earth's carbon stock, whereas its ocean, the Arctic Ocean, accounts for almost 15% of the carbon capture of the seas in the world. Even more, scientists have discovered that this permafrost, sheets of ice, is a powerful emitter of carbon to such an extent that if we do not control the use of fossil fuels, permafrost will reach the levels of China in terms of emissions. In addition to this, global warming will accelerate too as a consequence of ice melting, since both ice and snow have more capacity to reflect the sun's radiation than clear land or water, and surfaces with snow and ice are decreasing, as we are just seeing in this presentation. So what are the consequences of this melting ice? We have just studied that the poles are absolutely vital in the distribution of heat and hence the regulation of the Earth's climate. Because of global warming, these sheets of ice are melting, releasing more carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere, contributing to more global warming. These are the consequences derived from this dangerous situation. More global warming derived from global warming itself. As we have just seen, global warming will increase due to permafrost thawing, which will release big amounts of carbon into the atmosphere at the same time that ice and snow melt and cannot capture solar radiation anymore, increasing global warming too. Extreme weather events. As we said earlier, stable climate with regulated seasons are only possible if there is a balance in the interaction between glaciers, oceans, and the atmosphere. As we have studied in this presentation, glaciers are thawing even faster than it was previously estimated, which will change the interaction between these factors and will lead to dangerous weather events. Melting ice means rise in sea levels. The thawing and melting of ice and glaciers at a faster rate than previously estimated will lead to sea level rise, which will, consequently, lead to changes in the salinity of our oceans, which will also cause the Arctic to warm up even faster. Loss of habitats for species will lead to extinction of several species. Penguins in the South Pole have seen their populations decreased even up to 50%. The loss of ice sheets and glaciers mean the loss of habitats for species like penguins, polar bears, and more. Impact on our Antarctic food, which will clearly affect the food chain, since krill numbers are declining, which will affect whales, penguins, and seals that feed on this krill. And finally, impact on humans, derived from sea level rise, extreme weather events, and even the release of viruses and bacteria stored in the ice sheets for years and years. Es el momento de poner en práctica lo aprendido en esta presentación. Today's activity is about making a summary of what you think could be the dangers derived from sea level rise, and by using a map, point at the territories that could be affected the most by this sea level rise. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. Hasta luego.